We've taken a look at the different types of loops, and we've seen how we can use continue and break to move through or break out of those loops. Before we leave the topic behind, I want to talk about something that's a little bit more of a technical point, and that is array pointers. Let's go ahead and create a new workspace, and I'll show you. We're going to save as for our previous file, and I'm just going to call this pointers.php. Save that in my sandbox. And let's go ahead and say for loops, this will be pointers. Now, instead of all the PHP that I typed before, I'm just going to put back in a simple array, my ages array that I had before. Now, the computer maintains a pointer that points to the current value of an array, and by default, it's always the first value. And when we start looping through arrays, the computer moves that pointer along the array to get each value and to keep track of which value it's already sent you. So when we do something like for each, it's able to know, okay, I've already used that value. When it gets to the loop, it moves the pointer along to the next one and uses that value. Now, this is normally a fairly technical point, but it's going to come up for us when we start working with databases, and so I want to cover it now. So let's take a look at where that pointer is currently pointing. We'll open a PHP tag, and we'll just ask it to echo back 1 with a colon, and then we'll append it to current and ages. That'll give us the current place that the pointer is pointing. That's what the current function does. And then I'll go ahead and just append a BR tag to the end of that. Put our semicolon at the end, and let's go ahead and see what it's currently pointing at. We'll save the document. We'll switch back to Firefox, and I'm going to ask it for pointers. And it comes back and says 4. That's the current value. Now, we can move the pointer on our own. And we can simply do that by saying next, ages. And that's going to advance the pointer. So let's see what it says second of all. Just duplicate that line and ask it to give us the current state after we do the next. We'll save it, go back to Firefox, and now it points to the second number. So that next is going to bump it along each time. And if we were to say reset, that would send it back to the beginning. So reset ages. And then let's ask for it a third time. Let's see what the value is now. We go back and reload it in our browser, and it comes back with 4 again because it's pointing back to the beginning. We reset the pointer. Let's look at a while loop and see why this is going to be important and how we're going to work with this when we're working with databases. I'm going to paste in exactly such a while loop. So take a look at this. We've got our typical while, and we've got a condition that we need to satisfy right here. Notice that we have an assignment operator, the equal sign, not a double equals. What we're actually doing inside of that Boolean test is we're testing the assignment of current to age. And if it succeeds in assigning a value from the current ages to age, then it'll keep proceeding. It'll move along the array with each execution of the loop because we have our next ages in there. And then when it gets back to the next one, it'll assign the next current value to age. And each time it'll be outputting age as we go. Take a minute if you need a second to make sure you understand that. We're not doing a normal Boolean expression here. We're not evaluating if this is true or not in the normal sense of comparing two values. What it returns true is if it's able to make the assignment. So if that current ages exists, if the pointer points to something and hasn't moved beyond the end of the array, if it's at the end of the array, it'll return false and the loop will end. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And sure enough, you'll see we get each of the values and then it stops when it gets to the end. It doesn't keep looping infinitely because it ran out of values. Now, I want you to see this because when we start working with databases, this is the format that's going to take. We're going to grab a bunch of data out of our database, and that's going to be an array that we can then move through by assigning a value to it and moving through each time, letting the pointer update on its own so we can keep moving along the database and keep working with each successive row that's been returned. So let's say we have a database of products. We could have product 1 output, and then it would advance to the next product in the database, the next item in the array, and output that. It'll make a lot more sense when we're actually working with databases, but I wanted to give you exposure to it now because it's a little bit different than the rest of the loops that we've been working with, and it's going to play a very big part in our application development. But with that, we've now concluded everything that you need to know for the essentials of loops, and we're ready to move on to learn the essentials of functions. Functions are going to make your life a whole lot easier, and how well you're able to write functions and utilize them is what's going to make you go from being a good programmer to a great programmer. So let's get started on that in the next chapter.